Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano. It says 9th of February 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So we finally have a mainnet date for the Dencun upgrade. Now, of course, you probably all know the date by now. It is the 13th of March, and I said yesterday that I thought it would happen on the 5th of March, and I was about a week off then. You know, it's funny because I'd been saying for months that I thought it was going to be early to mid-March, so I got that right. I'm pretty proud of myself for that. But obviously, I was a bit aggressive on the timelines here. And, you know, it was funny. I was actually listening to the All Core Devs call yesterday to get the, because obviously I wanted to know what the date was going to be, and Tim Taiko had this spreadsheet that he put up on the screen, and it had a list of potential dates, and the 5th of March was in there. So while they were discussing the dates, I was rooting for the 5th of March, obviously. I was like, oh, come on, we can do the 5th of March, come on, I want to be right on this. But then, Tim and Danny Ryan were asking the core developers, when they could have their clients ready. The execution layer client teams figured that they could have their clients ready by next week, but the consensus layer client teams need another couple of weeks to have their clients ready. So that's really what pushed it out. Otherwise, it probably would have been March 5th, I think. I mean, maybe I'm just saying that. Maybe that's just wishful thinking, but I do think otherwise it would have been March 5th, but it's not. It's March 13th. But who cares? We finally have a date. Doesn't matter if if my prediction was wrong. I really don't care. We have a date for Dencun to go live on mainnet, and that means EIP 4844 is almost here. Now, of course, the question moves to how long until how long after mainnet until these layer 2s, until these rollups start using EIP 4844 blob space instead of call data, and what do those transaction reduction kind of costs look like? Because if you haven't noticed lately, over the past few days, gas has spiked on layer 1 again. It's been 50 plus Gwei whenever I've looked at it. I think it spiked overnight to 100 plus Gwei. And I say overnight as in overnight for me, which means that layer 2s using call data on Ethereum layer 1 are kind of having to deal with that spike. Whereas, as you guys know, with EIP 4844, it creates a new fee market called blobs, basically, where essentially any spikes in the normal Ethereum layer 1 fee market will not affect the blobs. So layer 2s will have more predictable fees, not just cheaper fees as well. So there are obviously two major benefits to blobs here, along with a bunch of long tail benefits as well. But I'm just so excited that this is finally going live. I mean, I've been talking about this for, I think blobs became a thing at least 2 years ago, or at least proto dank sharding became a thing at least 2 years ago. So I've been talking about it for that entire time. And it really feels like a monumental moment for Ethereum because for those of you who don't know, EIP 4844 lays the groundwork for the entire dank sharding roadmap, basically. It gives us and the first iterations of it, lays the groundwork for it, and gets us to a point where we can kind of do some short-term scaling, or I guess do some initial scaling for layer 2s, and then keep building upon that by increasing the blob sizes, by increasing the number of blobs, couple it with vertical trees going live next year so we can increase the gas limit of L1 Ethereum, but also increase the size of blobs and things like that, and then eventually put in DAS, or data availability sampling, on Ethereum L1 so that we can get the full benefit of dank sharding. And of course, the North Star is to be able to have hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of transactions per second on layer 2s, and having cheap transactions per second, because it's kind of funny when you actually look at this from two different perspectives. You look at it from the fact that, okay, can the chain do, lots of TPS, which, as I said before, is not a perfect metric, but for this example, I just want to run this through for you guys. Can the chain do lots of TPS, but can it remain cheap while doing that? Because some chains will claim that they can do lots of TPS, but then the transaction costs are creeping up over time. So if the transaction costs are creeping up over time, and you're doing more TPS, really, it's not the same. It's not the same thing as saying, okay, well, we can do cheap transactions and do such and such TPS. You need to basically scale both. You need to keep fees low. You need to keep fees at basically the same point as what they are when you're doing 100 TPS versus, thousands of TPS and tens of thousands of TPS. At least that's my opinion on it. But again, TPS is an imperfect metric. It's not comparable across chains. It's not really something that should be a kind of guiding principle for us. The guiding principle should really be just making sure that we can do things on chain while inheriting Ethereum security cheaply on these layer 2s. That's the star. That's the North Star there. I know I said before that obviously one of the North Stars is getting those TPS numbers up, but that's a kind of emergent property of the fact that we are just trying to get transaction costs down as much as possible without sacrificing security, without sacrificing kind of, I guess things like liquidity as well. Obviously, in the short term, liquidity has become fragmented with all the L2s, but as you guys know, there are multiple solutions in the works for that. I'm actually going to talk about one of those solutions. Actually, no, I'm not today. I think I've talked about a lot of them recently, and I've given you reading material for that, and there was that Justin Drake podcast that you should definitely go listen to as well. But really, yeah, I mean, the whole goal of this kind of scaling roadmap, the surge roadmap of Ethereum, dank sharding generally, is to just bring transaction costs down as much as possible for these layer 2s, while also having other parts of the roadmap that are focused on the layer 1 as well. Like, as I've said before, contrary to popular belief, Ethereum layer 1 is still scaling for layer 1, not just for layer 2s. It's just doing it in a different way. It's not just throwing hardware at the issue, which is the worst way to scale. It's doing it through novel kind of mechanisms, and that just takes longer to build out, because obviously throwing hardware at something is the easier path, because it's just like the path of least resistance, but that's not how we get true decentralization. That's not how we get strong security guarantees, and that's not what crypto is all about. That's not what a layer 1 blockchain at least is for, in my opinion there. But anyway, enough rambling from me there. March 13th, mark it in your calendars. I think Australian time, it's going to be like midnight, 1 a.m. So I probably will be up at that time enjoying like a live stream or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's just over a month away. So very, very close now, guys, after waiting quite a while for this to go live. But as I said, straight after Dencun, 100% of the focus shifts to Petra. They're actually trying to call it Pectra. I saw Tim Baiko tweet out Pectra, and I'm like, no, I'm not saying Pectra. Like, Pectra is too much. Petra, it's way easier to say. I hate saying Pectra because it's that C in there just kind of, it adds extra effort. And you guys know I'm going to be saying the word Petra a countless number of times over the next few months until we actually get it live on mainnet. So I'm sticking to Petra. And I guess like it's just a naming thing. It doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But if you hear Pectra or Petra, it references the same upgrade, which is the upgrade that's coming after Dencun. Now, speaking of naming, I did put out another tweet today where I basically cleared up a bunch of confusion for people. So people were asking, why are people saying that this is called Deneb and Cancun when other people are saying it's called Dencun? Well, I was like, okay, I got to put out a tweet about this because I'm seeing too much of this confusion. So I said the word Dencun is an amalgamation of the words Cancun and Deneb. Cancun is the name of the execution layer part of the upgrade, and Deneb is the name of the consensus layer part of the upgrade. So the same is true for the next upgrade, Petra or Pectra. It's an amalgamation of two words. It's Prague and Electra. Yes, it's Prague and Electra. I've got that right. I am not confident on which one's Prague, which one's Electra when it comes to the layers. I've got that confused right now, but that's what typically happens. Same happened with Chapala, which was Shanghai and Kapala, right? I believe Shanghai was the execution layer, Kapala was the consensus layer, but I might be getting that wrong again. But essentially, the reason why these things have different names is because they're on different tracks. The execution layer, consensus layer have different teams working on them. They're on different tracks, headed up by different people, and they need a way to keep track of them because the EIPs fall into different buckets depending on if they touch the execution layer or if they touch the consensus layer. They will fall into kind of different buckets there, and those names and those kind of things are done so that the devs and researchers can keep track of everything. So whenever you see these words kind of Dencun, Deneb, or Cancun, it's referencing the same thing. Going forward, if you see Petra or Pectra or Prague and Electra, referencing the same thing again. But yeah, we love to confuse people in Ethereum. that's for sure. But I just figured I'd bring that up for you guys as a point of clarity there. All right, so moving on to an interesting ETH research post that I saw come up on Twitter. So essentially, someone is trying to launch Ethereum nodes into low Earth orbit here. So essentially, you can see here this account called Mirror basically put out a, proposal or like an idea of how to do this. So essentially, there's a plan here, but there's 4 functional objectives. They want to be able to directly communicate with the satellite or with the node from a ground computer. Wants to run Ethereum light nodes. Wants to have a long running time of over 10 years and has certain computer experimental performance. And you can actually see that they've done quite a bit of research into this and what this would actually look like. They've got illustrations here. It's pretty nicely specced out, and this reminded me of something that I think there's a company called Blockstream. I know they haven't got the best reputation, but there was a company called Blockstream within the Bitcoin ecosystem that actually launched a Bitcoin satellite into space that actually, I believe, had a full node on it so you can communicate with it. I think these projects are really cool for things like, just for doing something fun, but also for redundancy. Like, imagine if we are able to launch like a bunch of full nodes into space, and they're like or into low Earth orbit, where essentially these are the full nodes of last resort. Like if every other full node goes offline on on Earth, we still have these full nodes in low Earth orbit here that we could actually talk to and could keep the network in sync, and running validators up there too. I don't know if you'd be able to run validators up there because of latency issues. I know that there is obviously Elon Musk's SpaceX. They're doing the kind of satellites, the satellite internet that they're doing. I can't remember the name of it right now. It's called something. I think it's called Starlink. Yeah, it's called Starlink. But it can provide you good bandwidth and good speeds and everything. But the problem is the latency. And for being a validator, your latency actually matters. As I said before, there's a 12-second slot time. 2 seconds of that is the block, but everything around that, especially when it comes to MEV, is very latency sensitive. So I don't know if you'd be able to run a validator, but you would definitely be able to run a light node up there. Full node might also be difficult because of the latency issues. But yeah, I mean, if you could run a light node up there, like a true kind of light client light node, that'd be very, very cool. And then you could probably run a validator in some kind of capacity there. But anyway, just the post that I wanted to highlight for you guys. I'm definitely not someone who is up to speed on what would actually be required to make this work in the Ethereum context. I think for Bitcoin it worked much easier because Bitcoin block times are 10 minutes, right? So latency isn't really an issue, and you're not running a Bitcoin miner off of this satellite, so it's not really an issue there. But you can go check out this post for yourself if you want to learn more about it. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so I came across this tweet today from Brianna, who works as strategy at Eigenlayer here. So she tweeted out saying, in the past 30 days, 1 out of every 4 Ethereum validators has joining the queue have set their withdrawal credentials to an Eigenpod. Probably nothing. So you guys know that Eigenlayer is currently the most hyped up, exciting thing happening in the Ethereum ecosystem and possibly within the crypto ecosystem by far. They have managed to accrue so much capital, so much restaked ETH. I mean, I checked it today. I think the TVL is 5.8 billion based on current ETH prices, and it's just gone absolutely bananas with projects like Swell and EtherFi and Puffer spinning up that are like these liquid restaking tokens, and there are other projects out there as well. I think there's a few others out there. I mean, I can't name them all, but I know one called Renzo, and there's a few others as well that are kind of doing this. But essentially, this has just exploded in popularity. And I guess the reason is obvious because Eigenlayer doesn't have a token right now. They're doing their point system, so everyone wants to farm Eigenlayer points. But then people are layering on their own kind of points programs on top, where you can farm like EtherFi points or Swell Pearls or Puffer points while farming Eigenlayer points here. So it is no shock to me that all of this kind of ETH is going straight into Eigenlayer. Like 1 out of every 4 Ethereum validators joining, like new validators joining, are going straight into Eigenlayer. And that's because people are putting ETH into things like EtherFi, which then goes and spins up these validators in the background, right? And basically deposits this into Eigenlayer to get around the LST caps there. Now, the reason I bring this up is twofold. One, because I love that ETH is basically getting sucked into this because of the fact that I think that Eigenlayer and restaking as a primitive is really, really cool for Ethereum, really bullish for Ethereum generally. I think it's going to unlock a bunch of new kind of things that we haven't seen before. But two, it speaks to something that I read a while ago on the dangers of restaking. So I read this. It was a post by Data Always. I can't remember exactly when they posted it. It's probably a while ago now. It'd probably have to be a year ago now, where essentially they said that the main risk of Eigenlayer is not the slashing risk. It is not the risk of a bug in the contract. It's none of that. The main risk, and maybe I'm misquoting them here, but this is what I understood as the main risk that they kind of highlighted. The main risk is that Eigenlayer basically becomes a thing that you have to, or restaking as a primitive. I shouldn't just say Eigenlayer. Restaking as a primitive basically becomes a thing that you have to get involved with. You're forced as a validator to restake your ETH. And the reason is like, let's consider the vanilla staking APY that you get today. This is not restaked ETH. This is just putting ETH into a validator, whether that be as a solo validator or a home validator, rocket pool node operator, or any of the LSTs out there, or Coinbase, whatever it is. The current vanilla APY, I think, is 4%, give or take a few percentage here and there, depending on what the execution layer rewards are like. So let's just say 4%. Okay, that's all well and good, but let's just say like more and more ETH gets staked, and then this APY goes down. So let's say you're at like 3% now, or 2%. And then you see all these other people that are restaking their ETH, they're earning 6%, 7% because of all this extra yield that has kind of been put on top from Eigenlayer or from restaking and from other things like maybe potentially airdrops and stuff like that. And then suddenly, you're, as a solo staker especially, and as like a home staker generally, you're suddenly forced into restaking because you're thinking, wow, why am I only earning 2% when I could be earning 6% over here? And the reason why you're only earning 2% is because all these other people are plowing into staking, and they're not just sitting in vanilla staking, they're now restaking in order to get that APR and to get that extra boost there. So then it basically forces everyone who doesn't want, everyone who isn't altruistic, which is the majority of the network, the majority of the people staking their ETH want to earn the best return possible on their ETH. And there's nothing wrong with that. But as I said, it forces people into doing this, right? Now, what do you think happens in the end state? Well, what potentially can happen in the end state here, in the worst case scenario, is that the yield from vanilla staking gets so low that it basically means that 100%, almost 100% of the network is forced into restaking, which basically means that restaking is de facto the security of the Ethereum network because it's so large. It becomes literally too big to fail, where essentially any failure of a restaking protocol, major failure I should say, means that it's a failure of Ethereum consensus, means that essentially, there's a lot of contagion that could happen here. Basically means essentially that the Ethereum ecosystem will be very in favor of a bailout for that restaking protocol. So that is the worst case scenario. And this is what I wanted to talk about today. So how do we get around this? How do we actually solve this issue? Well, there are many people looking into this. I'm not going to say that I know the solution. I'm not going to say that anyone really knows the solution right now. But I think there's two ways to solve this, with one of them being maybe a lot better than the other way. So two ways to solve this. First way is to adjust the issuance curve in order to basically make it so that people aren't forced to restake. There is a lot of research going into this right now. I think I've highlighted a bunch of it before on the Refuel. I'm not going to say like it's concrete or that it's anything that's going to be implemented on the network anytime soon, but there is a lot of research going into this. So that's maybe the harder path. I think the easier path and the more likely path is that restaking just gets enshrined in the protocol. Now, what I mean by this is basically instead of restaking existing outside of the protocol, such as a project like Eigenlayer, we basically say, okay, well, restaking is a thing. People love it. People want to do it. So let's just enshrine it in the protocol. Sort of like what we're doing with MEV Boost, where we're enshrining things like the relayers with PBS or ePBS as part of the protocol. And the reason you do this is to get rid of the negative externalities of restaking of MEV Boost. Because as I said before, MEV Boost is de facto, I guess like not de facto, but like 95% of the network uses MEV Boost to build their blocks. So essentially that becomes the network. So the core developers and researchers say, okay, well, we need to enshrine this thing. Like people are using it, the economic incentive is to use it. If you're not using it, you're missing out on a large chunk of rewards. So obviously everyone uses it. So that's the closest actual kind of analogy or closest comparison to restaking. So I think the end state here is that restaking gets enshrined in the Ethereum protocol itself, and that's how we get rid of a lot of these issues. Now, in saying that, I'm making it sound easy. That's not easy, right? That's not easy for a few reasons. I think the major reason is that by enshrining it in the protocol, you basically obsolete the projects that built restaking. So, for example, Eigenlayer is a project. I wouldn't say obsoletes it, but if you're going around Eigenlayer and you're basically just enshrining it, then people start to question, okay, what's the value of Eigenlayer? What's the value of these other restaking protocols if we can just do it natively in protocol? And I think the value prop just shifts. I don't think there's no value prop there. I think the value prop shifts to basically that Eigenlayer, instead of being the set of contracts that does the restaking, what they just basically become is the AVSs, right? The services that they provide. And then people can just opt into that using the enshrined restaked ETH. And they're still fine then. All the projects that were built, if they pivot to that, I think that would still be fine. And I think that would be a good outcome. But you also have the thing of, well, this thing's going to get really big before we even have a workable solution for enshrining restaking in the protocol. So, essentially, what does that look like? Does that look like one day there's 95% of all staked ETH is also restaked, and then we have to somehow migrate that across into restaking? Well, no, we wouldn't do that. We would have to basically make it so that it's an opt-in thing where people have to manually change from, say, restaking with Eigenlayer or another restaking project to restaking natively and as in an enshrined way. Okay, then what's the incentive for people to do that? There's probably not really one, right, for them. What people ask, what's in it for me, sort of thing. So that's where this kind of thing becomes very, very difficult to do, even if we were able to do it. And that's where it's not a silver bullet as well. At least that's my understanding of it. Now, of course, there are much smarter people than me, like Justin Drake, that is doing a lot of research into this and that has a lot of opinions on this and a lot of takes on this. But generally, that's my entire take on this subject of restaking. I do think that a large part of the total amount of ETH staked is going to end up restaked. I do think that's just a natural kind of incentive mechanism that's at play here with the economic incentives. I do think that we're going to be able to face this challenge head on as an ecosystem, and we're going to be able to work around it. And I do think a lot of the risks of this are completely overblown as well. I just want to make that clear. But yeah, that's basically how I see it. So I just wanted to kind of talk to that a little bit for today. And I'm going to stop rambling here because I'm going to probably I can spend the rest of the episode talking about this. I have so many thoughts on this. But that's basically my thoughts on it in a nutshell on that there and on restaking generally. All right, moving on, I just wanted to highlight this tweet from Meta Lawman talking about the SEC and how they've just been so contradictory in their arguments in court against both Coinbase and Binance. So I think I highlighted this a few weeks ago when it first happened, but essentially Meta Lawman here is highlighting the fact that in the SEC versus Coinbase case in court, which happened on Jan 17th, and the SEC versus Binance case, which happened on Jan 22nd, the SEC is both trying to say that the tokens are securities themselves and say that the tokens aren't securities. So they said that in the Coinbase case that they believe that the token itself is not the security, just the investment contract is the security. Whereas in the Binance case, they say that the token itself is a security. So which one is it, guys? Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, but it seems like they are trying to do that. So I just wanted to, again, highlight just how egregious the SEC is here and how, like, out of step they are with the law here as well. And how I believe that Coinbase especially is going to win their case against the SEC here. And I do wonder if there is a strategic kind of thing going on here with the SEC where they're basically trying to play both sides, where essentially in the Coinbase case, they know that they're probably going to have a harder time saying that the tokens themselves are securities because Coinbase is a US-based company. They approved Coinbase's IPO. They are a homegrown kind of unicorn company, and Coinbase has a much stronger case than something like Binance does, because in the Binance case, Binance does not have a good reputation in the US, right? The Department of Justice just kind of like railed them and made them pay a huge fine. They kicked out CZ, which, CZ might go to jail over the dodgy stuff that he did, right? So Coinbase has a lot more of a leg to stand on. So maybe in the Binance case, they're trying that kind of harder case to win, that the token itself is a security, because they maybe think that, okay, well, this is an easier thing to try at the Binance case. But with the Coinbase one, maybe they're smart enough to know that, hey, we shouldn't try this in the Coinbase one because the Coinbase legal team has a better kind of chance of winning than the Binance legal team does. That's just speculation on my behalf, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case here. But again, another case of the SEC being an absolutely useless organization, being incredibly damaging to crypto, and I really hope that Coinbase wins their case here. I hope that Binance wins too, mind you. I mean, I know, as I said, Binance probably has less of a chance than Coinbase, but I do think Coinbase has a really, really strong chance of winning here, and I can't wait to see this case continue to play out and for the SEC to lose. I mean, if the SEC loses to Coinbase here on this, that's basically, I would say it's basically game over. I mean, I would hope it would be game over for them, but I mean, unless the kind of administration changes, I think by the end of the year, unless the Republicans win the election. Unfortunately, I don't think Gary Gensler is going anywhere anytime soon from what I've seen, unless he gets a promotion to Treasury, but that would rely on Yellen stepping down. So yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, immediately, if the Republicans win, immediately Trump is going to replace Gensler with someone else. He's going to replace him with a Republican-friendly person, and then you can basically guarantee that it's going to be friendly for crypto for a while, because two Republicans that are currently SEC commissioners are both very friendly towards crypto, especially Hester Pierce. And if she becomes commissioner, well, yeah, I mean, there you go. The head commissioner. If she becomes the head of the SEC, then you can be guaranteed that crypto is in for a really, really positive time from the SEC's point of view there. I would even go as far as to say, if these court cases are still going on, that the case against Coinbase at least would be withdrawn completely. Like, I would actually think that would happen here, because it would basically be a complete change in regime here. But at the same time, crypto is not I wouldn't say crypto is that much of a single issue vote for enough people to move the needle really yet. It may be in the future in the US. I mean, this is getting to the political landscape of things, but unfortunately, we're in the position where in the US, you already only have a choice between two parties, which sucks to begin with. And now if you're in crypto, even if you disagree with every other Republican policy that there is, every other thing that there is, even if you hate, Trump and whatever, it might get to a point where you're like, well, crypto is such a large part of my life, and if the SEC doesn't become friendlier towards crypto, then I'll be forced to move out of the US if I want to build. You may be forced to vote for something based on that single issue, which just absolutely sucks. I hate that US people have to deal with this. I hate that all my friends that I know in the US, a lot of the builders, they have to deal with this. I hate that projects projects are blocking people in the US from even farming points now. I saw the EtherFi today, unfortunately, has now blocked people in the US from farming points. And, you know, that's definitely due to the hostility of the SEC and other regulatory bodies in the US. And it absolutely sucks, guys. It sucks. And it sucks for the projects. So the projects don't want to be doing this. Like, they hate that they have to do this, but they have to listen to their lawyers. They don't want to go to jail, right? They don't want to end up, with the SEC kind of like suing them and having to essentially pay out all these damages or pay out settlements or whatever. Like, it sucks, guys. So I do think that, you know, if the Republicans win, it'll be very, very good for crypto. But other than that, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Like, I'm not going to go on about my politics here. You guys definitely don't come to the show for that. But in terms of like the SEC, yeah, if Gensler doesn't step down and doesn't leave, it's just going to be hostility towards crypto for the foreseeable future, which just, as I said, absolutely sucks. But anyway, you can go read this full tweet from Meta Lawman. It has a bit more details in it. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But I'm just going to get through the rest of these updates for today because I'm coming up on time here. So Rabby has released their mobile wallets. You can now use Rabby's mobile wallet. It's in beta. You can connect your current mobile wallet and enjoy an upgraded and secure UX on mobile with zero risks of migrating your seed phrase. So you can basically migrate your existing mobile wallet, whether that be MetaMask or something else, into Rabby without having to put your seed phrase in, from my understanding. So you guys know that Rabby is one of my favorite wallets these days. It is so good from a security standpoint. So now if you're a mobile wallet user and you'd rather use Rabby on mobile than desktop, maybe you just want to use both, you can now do so. So I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to follow the links. Definitely follow the link that's linked here. Don't go Googling it for yourself or anything like that because you might come across scams and phishers. Just go to the link that's here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out there. All right, so a major announcement from the Polygon ecosystem today. So the Polygon Twitter account tweeted out saying, releasing the Type 1 upgrade to the ZK EVM prover, the next generation of Polygon's proving tech. It can generate proofs for any EVM chain, sidechain, optimistic rollup, even Ethereum itself. When proving Ethereum mainnet blocks, average per transaction costs less than a cent. So 0.002 cents to 0.003 cents. And you can see here, Sandeep, one of the co-founders of Polygon, has tweeted out the 4 main benefits and why it's a big deal. So the first one is that any EVM chain, whether it's optimistic or a side chain, can integrate and plug in ZK proofs and achieve full Ethereum provenance. Additionally, they can connect to the aggregation layer that Polygon has and share liquidity from other chains. So as I was talking about before, the fragmented liquidity issue is slowly but surely getting solved here. This new prover is 36 times faster than the only previous attempt at a T1 prover. Polygon moves one step closer to the Polygon POS chain becoming a ZK Validium, which is super exciting. And the dream of an aggregated blockchain network is supercharged, as this allows any other existing EVM chains to join the aggregation layer without significant effort. So what that means is basically any ZK or any existing EVM chains out there, whether they be layer 2, layer 1, I believe even, or sidechain, can integrate with this and basically join the Polygon ecosystem and basically join this aggregation layer, which is awesome, guys. Like, this is a huge deal. I honestly think that Polygon does not get enough credit. I know that you guys know I'm an advisor to Polygon, but like, full disclosure here, I already have my tokens. They're not like my tokens already vested out to me. Like, I'm not vesting any more tokens from here, so I'm under no obligation to shill Polygon. I mean, I do hold the tokens, right? But like, you guys know me. I don't care about shilling the things that I hold. Maybe besides ETH, but that's a whole different story there. But I do think Polygon doesn't get enough credit for all of the innovation that they're doing. You know, they're not just doing their prover stuff. They're doing things like the aggregation layer. They're bringing in a lot of, Web 2 businesses into the ecosystem. They're working closely with Immutable on their gaming stuff. They're just doing so many really cool and innovative things. And for some reason, they're not getting enough credit for it. So really, guys, if you haven't been paying attention to Polygon, I highly recommend that you do so. In my eyes, they're one of the top layer 2 ecosystems in the Ethereum space. Right next to things like right next to ecosystems like Arbitrum and Optimism, and a few others out there. So yeah, definitely go check them out and check what they've been up to lately. But I think you're going to be hearing more and more about them this year because they have been building this stuff for quite a while now, and now they're releasing it out into the wild. As I've said before, they're going to migrate that POS chain to a ZK Validium. They're also going to migrate their token from Matic to Pol to upgrade their token, which basically becomes a a token for the entire Polygon ecosystem, and they've got a few other things up their sleeves as well. And they're also very far along with governance. They have a whole governance framework that they're creating, and spearheading that is Hudson Jameson, who worked on the Ethereum governance side of things for a long time there. So they're just killing it, guys. Like, and as I said, like, you guys know I'm an advisor to Polygon, but I already have my tokens. I'm under no obligation to keep shilling them or anything. But like, I really do like to put a spotlight on things that I think aren't getting enough attention. So Polygon is one of those things. Definitely go check this new announcement out from them. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, speaking of layer 2 ecosystems that are killing the game, I think Taiko is one of those, especially from like the research point of view. They've been working on a bunch of different things, you guys know, like base boosted rollups and stuff like that, which is really, really promising. But today they announced something maybe, outside of their actual technology, where they announced that they're pledging 1% of their token supply to the Protocol Guild, which obviously is something that a lot more projects are signing up to do recently. You saw EtherFi do it recently. Now Taiko, I think we're going to see more and more projects do this. And guys, like, I can't even like talk about how much money this is potentially going to be. Like, think about 1%, right? So let's say that the total market cap of all the projects that give 1% to the Protocol Guild is $100 billion. That is $1 billion that goes to the Protocol Guild. If it's $100 billion, if the total market cap is $100 billion, right? That's $1 billion that goes to core devs and researchers, that goes to them sharing in the fruits of their labor, so to speak, and goes towards funding core development and core researchers. I mean, like, and that's on top of their existing salaries, mind you. So, like, this stuff is just so cool. I just love that the Protocol Guild exists. It is so much better than, I guess, what other people suggested. Like, instead of burning fees under EIP 1559, let's just send all the fee revenue to a DAO, and then from that DAO we can distribute it out. That was never going to work for reasons I've outlined before. But what does work is the Protocol Guild opt in from these projects, giving back just 1% of their token supply, which is a small amount for them, but is a huge amount when aggregated across all the other projects, and a huge amount for the around about 160 core Ethereum developers and researchers. So kudos to Taiko for this, but they're not going to be the last ones, guys. There's going to be so many more of these projects. Like, I mean, I've been encouraging projects that I'm involved with that haven't done tokens yet. I say to them, hey, if you're going to do a token, you have to give at least, up to 1% of your token supply to the Protocol Guild. That is like something that you need to do. And pretty much like all the ones that I've spoken to about this are very receptive to this. So you'll be seeing more announcements about this, I believe, in the in the near future here. But yeah, kudos to Taiko for doing this here. Anyway, finishing up here, I just wanted to highlight something from Farcaster. So I put I put a cast out where I asked people what their favorite project in Ethereum is outside of things like Eigenlayer and the various L2s, because they're already very popular. And I got a ton of great replies. So if you guys are looking for a new or existing Ethereum projects to pay attention to that you may not have heard about otherwise, go check out the replies to this cast. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But as you can see, a ton of replies here, guys. Like, people on Farcaster are way more active than they are on Twitter, which is great because I love it. I mean, I'm spending more time on Farcaster these days than I am on Twitter, even though I've still got the Twitter kind of links being predominantly on the refuel. That's only because a lot of people are still using Twitter as a way to kind of get their news out there. But when it comes to actually having good conversations, when it comes to finding new things, Farcaster is just way ahead. So yeah, definitely go check out this cast. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. But that's it. I'm on time here. I went over time, but I actually thought I wasn't even going to get to 30 minutes today, but it seems like I've gone overtime because you guys know me. I love to ramble about things. But anyway, that's going to be enough for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next week. Thanks, everyone.